Imu's immortality. We all know the story.
That's right.
Ivankov dropped it in chapter 1086. Someone used the Ope Ope No Mi on him. Perennial Youth operation. That's why he's been around for a dummy long time. 800 years to be exact.
But wait!
Ivankov might be wrong, and I don't think Oda put those words in his mouth by accident. Because after everything that just went down in chapters 1179 and 1180, the Devil's Fruit, the Omen, everything we just watched Imu actually do, it gets really hard to keep looking away from the fact that the Ope Ope No Mi was never the answer we thought it was. Oda may have been playing us for 90-something chapters straight, and we ate that shit up. Alright, so we're deep into the Elbaf arc. Imu has just shown up in person, and Oda dropped something on the table that just changes how we're supposed to read every Imu theory written in the last 3 years, including the one Ivankov gave us. We were led to believe that Imu was immortal because of the Ope Ope No Mi. That's how he's been alive since the Void Century, and honestly, yeah, that answer landed easily, because a decade before Ivankov ever said it, Law and Doflamingo's conversation spelled it out for us, that the Ope Ope No Mi was the ultimate devil fruit. But here's what nobody's going back to check. Eva never said Imu used the Ope Ope No Mi. He said somebody had to. That's a guess. Now, look at what Oda's built. Chapter 1179, Imu shows up on Elbaf, and Oda finally names the ability that Imu has. He calls it the Akuma no Mi, the Devil's Fruit. And I want to be honest here, Oda hasn't even confirmed this is a devil fruit the way we normally understand them. It's clearly related, but it's being named like its own category, and here's what matters. This ability already shows the same immortality mechanic, or at the very least, similar immortality mechanics, just like the Ope Ope No Mi is famous for. Can we rule out the Ope Ope No Mi's involvement completely? No, I guess. Not until Oda says so, but the evidence we have right now is leaning hard toward the Akuma no Mi being the source. And here's where I'm going to make a claim that the evidence backs up. I think Oda used Ivankov as a vehicle, a guessing character, pointing us straight at the Ope Ope No Mi. So for 90-something chapters, we just fall asleep on the real answer. Oda didn't have to lie, he just had to let somebody guess, and we just run with it. Because the Ope Ope No Mi wasn't a random decoy, it was the perfect one. And once you see why, the conversation is pretty much over. So let me show you why. Let's start with the most obvious parallel, the one you can see on panel, just no interpretation needed. One of these signature techniques of the Devil's Fruit, the Abyss, operates through a defined circular space. And if that framing sounds familiar, it should, because it's the same basic mechanic Law's been using for as long as we know him. Law's room is a sphere. Anything inside it, he can touch, move, cut, swap with something else. And that's what Shambles is, a way to move things through the space without physically touching them. The space itself does the work. And when Law showed off his awakening, we saw for the first time against Big Mom in chapter 1030. He started doing something new. K-Room, or Krum, smaller rooms applied directly to objects like a sword. He doesn't need to stand inside a giant sphere anymore. The room goes where he needs to send it to. Now, look at Imu's Abyss. We've been seeing this technique since chapter 1150 when Imu was still operating through Gunko. Abyss circles, summon mid-combat, pulling out weapons on demand. Then chapter 1179 happens, Imu comes to Elbaf in his own body, and a massive Abyss circle opens up in the sky above Oro's castle. That's how he arrives. The Abyss doesn't just move him across space, it can move objects through it, bodies through it, summon weapons out of it. And those smaller Abyss circles Imu generates in his hands mid-fight, same form factor as K-Room.
They're the same picture.
Same evolution. The circle isn't a container the user stands in anymore. It's something they conjure on demand and aim. That's the piece that matters. The ring is a conduit. The space is the medium. And whether you're calling it room or calling it abyss, the mechanic is still doing the same thing. Now, if the spatial mechanic was the only mirror between these two fruits, I wouldn't be making this video. Because what comes next is where the pattern really starts to show itself. That brings us to how both fruits treat the body as separable from the self. Let's start with the obvious. The personality transplant surgery. Law can swap souls between bodies. He did it to the Straw Hats on Punk Hazard. Now compare that to Imu's Covenant possession. Imu projected himself into Saturn's body during the God Valley incident 38 years ago. He did it again during the Albath arc through Gunko, souls moving into other bodies. Different method, but same concept. But here's the piece that makes this mirror almost impossible to ignore. Law has a technique called mess. He extracts someone's heart, keeps it in a cube, and it keeps beating outside the body. He used it on Caesar Clown and Smoker during Punkcasters to leverage them into compliance. You hold the heart, you control the person. Now look at Summers in chapter 1179. When Zoro dismembered him, Summers' steel heart got picked up by Goldberg. It's still beating, completely separate from the rest of his body. And when Zoro asked out loud whether destroying that heart would kill Summers for good, Summers reacted with shock and horror. The heart is separable. It keeps working outside the body. It's the leverage point. That's not a loose thematic rhyme. That's the same mechanic scaled up. And I want to be honest here, Covenant isn't only mirroring the Ope Ope No Mi. The Kage Kage no Mi extracts shadows to control bodies. The Habe Habe no Mi uses forced contracts to strip people out of agency. And all that I talk about in this video here. But essentially, the Akuma no Mi is basically bundling what those fruits can do separately. But there's a reason the Ope Ope no Mi stands out as a specific mirror, which brings us back to where this video started, Imu's immortality. Now, I want to be careful with how I frame this one because we're comparing two things. The Akuma no Mi is tied to Imu's immortal body as a property of the fruit power. The Ope Ope no Mi side of this comparison is a single technique, the Perennial Youth operation, that one specific ability to grant eternal youth at the cost of the user's life. That's what earned it the title. Here's what I noticed when I actually went back and looked. Oda's never technically shown us that technique performed on panel. Doflamingo talked about wanting it done to him. Ivankov speculated Imu received it 800 years ago. And in all of that, as far as we could tell, Doflamingo and Ivankov have no clue what this process actually looks like, right? And as readers, we definitely don't know. The entire justification for the Ope Ope no Mi being the ultimate devil fruit is a technique that's been discussed, named, and theorized about, but it's never really been visually demonstrated. I think that's a deliberate negative space, and Oda doesn't build those by coincidence. Now, look at what Oda has been willing to show us though. The immortality mechanics of the Akuma no Mis that he's been putting directly on panel. The scene that made me realize what he's been building is at the God Valley incident. During God Valley, Imu possessed Saturn's body and manifested a duplicate of himself from Saturn's back. That duplicate got bodied left and right from Rocks, Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. Now, here's the piece I actually had to think about for a while, Imu's immortality. Clearly, Imu is the source. The Akuma no Mi gives him the power, and when he makes a covenant with someone, the 5 elders, the Knights of God, he's extending his power to them. They don't have their own immortality, they're running on Imu's. That's why when Saturn failed to stop Luffy, Imu punished him by revoking the covenant, and Saturn instantly withered into a skeleton. The immortality wasn't Saturn's to keep. It was always on loan. So when Roger, Rocks, Garp, and etc. hit Imu at God Valley, they weren't attacking some person who happens to be hard to kill. They were attacking the source of an immortality system through a duplicate of Imu himself, coming out of someone he was actively possessing. And the duplicate regenerated. That's what the Akuma no Mi can seemingly do. Now compare that to the Ope Ope no Mi. The Perennial Youth operation also extends life from what we've heard. It gives one person eternal youth at the cost of the user's life. One user, one recipient, one time. That's it. The user dies, the operation can't happen again until a new user eats the fruit. The way I see it, both fruits are doing similar things at the core, handing eternal life from one person to another. The Ope Ope no Mi can do it once, while the Akuma no Mi runs an entire immortality system, with Imu at the center, his covenant members plugged in around him, and if someone disappoints him,
you're dead!
And on the topic of being tethered into something that doesn't die, do me a favor, like, subscribe, hit the bell, hit that hype button, because that thing actually moves the needle early. It's how smaller channels get pushed out to more people right when it counts. Think of it as your covenant with the channel, except nobody's losing years off their life, probably. Because what comes next, that's where everything lands. So go back to Dressrosa, chapter 761. The chapter is literally called Ope Ope no Mi, and it's Law himself who lays down the whole thing. The Perennial Youth operation, the life cost, and the ability to hand someone eternal youth. Then Doflamingo backs it up and calls it the ultimate devil fruit. That's where that label gets stamped. Now, clock the distance. Chapter 761 to Ivankov's speculation in 1086. That's over 320 chapters of Oda just letting us marinate in that label in our heads. And then another 90-something chapters from Eva to the Akuma no Mi reveal in chapter 1179. A full decade of real-world time where the Ope Ope No Mi was the ceiling. Nothing was touching it. This is the same play Oda ran with the Goma Goma no Mi. Plant the label, let it go canon in everybody's head, and then flip it and show it was always sitting on top of something bigger. Except with the Goma Goma no Mi, the reframe was about Luffy's power. This one is about the fruit hierarchy itself. So here's the full misdirect, laid out clean. Oda built a mirror, the Ope Ope no Mi sharing the same architecture as the Akuma no Mi at every level we just broke down. He stamped the ultimate label on it a decade ago through both Law and Doflamingo and let us make it part of how we see the world. Then when the Final Saga kicked off and Imu's immortality came into question, he handed the speculation to Ivankov, a trusted character, at the right chapter, pointing straight at the one fruit he'd already told us was the ceiling. Oda didn't have to lie. He just built the frame, and we filled it in ourselves. But let's be real about what I can't prove. I can't prove Oda planned all of this on purpose. Maybe Oda didn't plan anything. Maybe he just wrote two fruit powers that happen to work similarly, which is something he does a lot. I can't rule that out either, but here's what I think still holds up either way. The pattern is right there in front of us, but what do you guys think? Because there really are two honest reads. Either Oda has been planning this misdirect since Dressrosa, and everything since has been the payoff, or this whole parallel is something Oda just did on the spot when the Final Saga started, and the earlier groundwork is coincidence that he's just leveraging. Both are defensible, both have receipts. So if this parallel is legit, even halfway, then we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. So zoom out for a second, because what we've been actually looking at this whole video isn't just one theory about Imu's fruit. It's a pattern in how Oda writes reveals. For 10 years, all of us, even characters with a story, pointed at the Ope Ope no Mi as the one fruit that could give someone eternal youth. But now that we've been seeing the Akuma no Mi in action with its own immortality mechanics on panel, the Ope Ope no Mi might not be the only fruit that could do it. It might not even be the one that actually did it for Imu. The information wasn't hidden. The label was just pointing at the only candidate we had. And that's what I actually think Oda is doing in the story. He's not hiding the answers. He's getting us to lock into one label, one fruit, one framework, and one assumption, long before he introduces the thing that makes it incomplete. Which means every subtle label in the story is worth going back to. And if you want one more place to look, go back to Law, because Law's whole backstory is built around a disease named after a mineral, Amberlet syndrome, and the Ope Ope no Mi was what cured him. Now, think about the disease Ginny had, sapphire scales, and on the channel I've already argued that there's a strong case it connects directly to Imu's power. Two characters, two diseases named after minerals, two fruits that mirror each other. I don't think Law having a disease named after a mineral tied to the Ope Ope no Mi is an accident. Law's whole backstory is a smaller mirror of something way deeper, because the real question isn't whether Oda's been mirroring fruits, it's how deep the mirrors go. And all of that traces back to something Oda planned during the 4th century, which I broke down in